The one, the one, the one, the one, the one, the one, the one.
Hey, how you guys doing? This your boy KLA Cloud the Wanderer. And I have a guest. His name is Trey Brunson. If I
Mhm.
okay,
You got it. You got it.
I ain't gonna, I ain't gonna
You
mess
nailed
up
it.
because sometimes my mind it just like it just kind of slips away. But I really appreciate you giving me your time. And yeah, I discovered you on Instagram and I
Sure. Yeah.
like the illustrations. Like
Yeah.
got you into making comics.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, happy to be here. Um it's been a minute since I did an interview. So uh yeah, I think that those last couple years has been um pretty much doing one shot stories that I really wanted to explore. But I've been making comics off and on since I was a kid. So it was more or less like kind of taking it seriously the last couple years. So this is my second one shot that I published on Manga Plus Creators. Uh, just putting things out there, and kind of exploring, seeing what I really want to move forward with. If I decide to do my own independent series, so before committing to a big story, doing Chasers High was kind of like my segue into let's see if this even works. So yeah,
Oh,
that's where we're at.
let me showcase that. Now this is what Chase is hot.
Yeah,
Like
Chasers High. Yeah, that's correct.
yeah, like I read a little bit about it. Like it's like
Mm.
a space cowboy fantasy. If I'm
Yeah,
expressing it
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. So it's a sci-fi western. Um, Kind of like I don't know if you've ever watched Free Run or read Free Run, the anime, but it's kind of like Free Run meets Star Wars, like specifically maybe like the Adventures of Han Solo and Chewbacca or something like that.
Okay,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
All right, all right. Like so, oh, okay. So like who's the characters in this? Like it's the elf. It's like a girl elf
yeah,
and
yes. So I can tell you a little bit about the characters without necessarily spoiling too much for folks who want to read it. So the elf character is Eno. She is a chaser essentially, and my chasers are the form of, I guess you could say, bounty hunters or smugglers, whichever you prefer. Hunters, if you've seen Hunter x Hunter. And so Eno is, out to get the bag. She's out to make the money. Um, Her counterpart, Grizz, her colleague, Grizzly, the big teddy bear you see there. Yeah.
Mhm.
He is her partner, and they work alongside each other. As well as, the character you have seen, the guy that kind of looks like a cowboy at the start,
Mm.
the dude
Okay.
standing on top of the rock, that's Death Grip Dan. And so he is one of the adversaries in the story. Yeah, yeah, good old Dan. So there's a lot going on with him. You can kind of see that he might be potentially part machine. So yeah, Death Grip Dan is important, and then the High Governess, which doesn't necessarily get a lot of spotlight in this story, but she is integral and pivotal to um, the buildup for the exposition. So um, those were the four characters that I really focused on in the story. Obviously, there's minor characters that are kind of like extras. You got those droids there; those are the capital droids. So, uh, kind of like my version of maybe like droid, like my stormtroopers, maybe essentially, but they're droids. Um, that work for the crown essentially. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. A lot of stuff that I didn't really, like I said, it's a one shot. So, didn't really have time to uh, flesh all the lore and stuff like that out without putting people to sleep, essentially. When you're doing a one shot, you want to limit yourself to a certain amount of pages to get the story told and not leave the reader going, well, what was that about? So that was the goal. is to make sure that they got a little bit, but give the reader something familiar, so that it doesn't seem like it comes out of thin air. Um, and that was the goal with Chasers High. So yeah, Chasers High. I always wanted to do a western, like a
Yeah.
sci-fi western, and so that's kind of the theme. It follows very much that theme of kind of being a sci-fi western, etc. So
Like, where you from? I'm picking up your accent a bit.
North Carolina. So born and raised in
Oh,
North
okay.
Carolina.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm a North Carolinian.
oh,
Yeah, Tar Heel State.
okay. One thing I know about North Carolina on the basketball, the college basketball team,
Yeah.
and yeah, Michael Jordan. That's
Yeah. We get to claim Michael Jordan, J. Cole,
I
we
didn't
get a
even
lot
know
of,
he was from North Carolina.
yeah, Fayetteville.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, so we claim those. A lot of other things, people like the ability to go to the coast and the mountains here. So a lot of Northerners move down. They get we call it the halfway point for relocating for Northerners, because they go all the way down to Florida, realize it's too hot, and they come back up, and they stay in North Carolina. So
okay. Yeah, I got this is guy I know. He's a YouTuber. He's from North Carolina.
mhm.
All the way George Page.
Okay.
Yeah, he's into comics and stuff like that. Yeah, but like so, like so, how long you been doing this comic? Like this specific comic, Chases Hot.
So Chasers High actually started off as an idea I had around summer of last year. So I just got done with a one shot that I did called Anti-Agent. I worked on that with essentially I created the story, but I was actually in the midst of a mentorship for comics during that time, and that was kind of like the product that came out of my mentorship, Anti-Agent. And that one, really was like another original idea that I had really, thought about, and I got a lot of guidance on it, finished it up. It was really fun. Would love to revisit that. But after Anti-Agent, I was like, well, at the time, my mentor's advice was like, explore as many different comic ideas as you can before committing to just one series, because you might not know what series you want to write long term unless you try. So um I'd started working on Chasers. It was actually a completely different story that I ended up scrapping. I did a script. I kind of had like a, not necessarily like a fever dream, but like a burst of inspiration. And I just started drawing, like they weren't very fleshed out. Like essentially like the prototypes for what would become Eno, the elf character, and Grizz and things like that. And I'd had a whole nother storyline developed for them. And by the time I got to the end of the script, I was like, this ain't it. Like this ain't it. So I scrapped it, and I started off completely fresh, kind of really wanting to stick with those characters and moving towards the direction of more of like a sci-fi western. And then so that's where Chaser Side came in. And I did, most all of it traditionally. And then, scanned it in, and then did the edits, the lettering, things like that, uh, post production. But it took me about a year, seriously, off and on, because got a day job, and so it took me about a year to actually, from the time that I had to idea to completion, to actually get it out. And so I really wanted to get it out this summer. Didn't really want to drive it any further, take it out any longer. But yeah, that's when I started it, probably about a year ago, close to that.
When you released it.
So I released it July 1st of this year. Yeah. So
Okay.
July 1st was the release date. Um, yeah. So yeah, it's been out for roughly a couple weeks now. So
How's the readership like? Because I know
it's
you put it on.
yeah.
You got a link like on your Instagram,
Mhm.
and I just happen to see the links to
Yeah.
agent, anti-agent, and the high chaser.
Yeah,
I'm
Chase is high. Yeah,
chasing
yeah.
high.
Mhm.
Excuse me for the
No,
title.
you're good. You're fine. Yeah, so right now, at least the last time I checked it, it was around 11,000 views. So that could be individual readers. It also could be people rereading uh the chapters, but right now it's been in probably the top 10 on the site for the last 2 weeks. Right now it's sitting at number 11. So we'll see what happens at the end of the month. Like typically, uh the contest runs throughout the month. They do like a global contest, so you're basically competing against everyone around, around the world. And so it's kind of cool to see Chasers High kind of hanging in there, doing its thing. From you know not necessarily having a ton of uh, a big like following or anything like that before I started uh doing it. It was just kind of like, this was an idea I really had, and I really wanted to write the story. So it's cool to see it kind of like getting traction or resonate with certain readers and things like that. So there might be something there. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, it seemed a bit
Mhm.
interested. I wasn't quite sure, like on
Mhm.
like what was it about a little bit, because
Yeah,
it seemed like it seemed like there were certain parts like I, it kind of seemed like an intergalactic Star Wars, but I just
yeah.
wasn't too sure about
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. That was definitely a big inspiration. I
it.
always you know, I wouldn't necessarily say a big Star Wars fan, but I like the first trilogy a lot. I always loved Han Solo and Chewie, and I was like, man, that would kind of be cool to do like my own, like, you know, kind of inspired a little bit, but also like that Western theme. I really like The Mandalorian, and so that was like, to me, when I think about like a space western, I think about like Mandalorian or like Cowboy Bebop or something like that. And so I thought that, oh, that would be really cool. That would be um and it would challenge me to do something that I hadn't did before. So, Anti-Agent is more like a detective slash espionage story, whereas this is completely different, new realm. So just to keep trying new things and challenging myself.
Yeah. So would you say you're like manga influence? Like when because
Oh,
you
my
have your
biggest influence?
yeah, like it seems a
Yeah,
little manga,
yeah,
but it's like you have like a different style to it.
yeah, yeah. So I would say that manga might have been my biggest influence growing up, but I would say as I've gotten older, I used to watch a lot of cartoons as a kid, old Looney Tunes, stuff like that. And so as I've gotten older and started gaining appreciation for different art styles, you can kind of see like bits and pieces of like old Disney movies, in there, like a Disney style kind of combined with manga. Or like I also picked up a lot from like Western comic books, like watching a lot of Jim Lee, or watching a lot of like different comic book creators work. And like I was like, oh man, so this is how they do that. And so incorporating that into kind of like my own style, um and creating, what I have now, which kind of feels a little bit like home. It's like I said, it pulls from a lot of different places. But my biggest influence was Akira Toriyama, rest in peace. But creator of Dragon Ball, he was my biggest influence, growing up. And so you can kind of see where I got a lot of, at least not necessarily techniques from like how it's implemented in my art style, but kind of like even down to the gags. He's always been one of those writers. I don't know how much you know about Dragon Ball, but he's always been like more of a gag artist that turned into more of like an action series. And so I really try to keep those gags going in my stories. I like making people laugh, and I hope that they get a laugh in it by the time they finish reading it. So I try to keep it lighthearted, and with that style, you kind of can see like the cartoony vibe in it where it's not too serious. It's not like, your typical uh, you know, 60s, 70s Batman comics or something like that. And it has that vibe, it has that manga touch to it. So a lot of different things that kind of rolled into one.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, I'm gonna make a confession. I just only read the Chasers High. I didn't get a chance to
Yeah,
read.
no, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do like the artwork to it, though.
Mhm.
Like, did you go to like art school or anything like that?
No, as a matter of fact, I wanted to right out of high school, but as a you know, typical knucklehead at like age 18, I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Right,
Um, and so, I ended up going to community college and then later going to a university here in North Carolina. Um, but no, nothing for art, nothing for art. It was kind of always something that I did on the side, and honestly, a hobby that I picked up and put down multiple times throughout my life. And then, like I said, probably in the last 2 to 3 years, I got really serious about it and said, "Man, I really want to make a comic book. I really want a book on a shelf someday." And so, I guess I got to learn how to draw better. So I had some skills that transferred. I did have uh, a lot of art classes in high school. So I had some things that transferred, but then a lot of things that I had to learn on the fly, and honestly, that I'm still learning.
right.
Um, a lot of things that I had to learn on the fly, and that took a lot of practice to even get to where I'm at now, where I feel comfortable. I can say probably drawing, 80% of the things that I need from imagination. And then if I'm really stumped, I pick up a reference or go back to a comic where I've seen them do a certain scene a certain way. And I'm like, oh, that's how you do it, to try to figure it out and piece it together. But that was one of the struggles when I was creating Anti-Agent, a year ago. My skill wasn't where I needed it to be to really illustrate it the way that I wanted to. So I just kind of had to go because when I was doing that story, I was also entering a contest that had a deadline, and so it was like I don't have time to like make this the perfect thing, but I'm gonna do it the best way I can. And so, but I had a lot more time when I did Chasers, and that really paid off because I got the time. That's also another reason why it took me as long as it did, because I was still studying different techniques and learning things along the way in the midst of trying to complete Chasers High. So most of my stuff is self-taught, man. Most of it is self-taught. YouTube helps a ton. YouTube is probably giving me an entire art degree by itself.
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. A lot of people I've talked to, they said they have learned from YouTube and stuff. It is
Hmm.
like even through animation, like I
Yeah.
remember I was talking to one guy. He just took a course on YouTube, just learning
Hmm.
how to animate and stuff. So I was like, wow. He actually made like a feature of film. It, it's on
Wow.
Rumble. Yeah, it's on Rumble and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like, how did you like with the panels? Like, how did you kind of like put them, arrange them? I would
Oh,
say design
yeah.
and stuff.
Oh, so like, yeah. So most of the times, what I'll do is I'll write the script first, and
Yeah,
then I'll take the script and then adapt that to a storyboard. And so my storyboards they're not clean. Most of the times they're for my eyes only. So uh, at that point, they're quick sketches and things like that. So I can move them around and change them on a dime. I don't have to like think about, oh man, do I have time to uh, really edit this? Now, some pages I'll do like I'll get to the storyboard, and once I get to that page that I'm working on, I'll say, I don't really like that, and I'll change it on the fly right there. And so, um, usually I try to make it flow in a way that's easy to digest for the reader, because I know a lot of times with comics, sometimes what'll turn somebody off from reading the comic is they don't know where to read. They don't know
Yeah.
what panel to go to, and it kind of looks like a bunch of black and white, like mess or whatever. But the artistic skill is crazy. It's just you lost the reader because now you broke the immersion, right? And so I try to be conscious of that. Um, I know obviously it's still easy to make those kind of mistakes, but when I'm doing the storyboarding, that's kind of where I'm thinking about planning all that out. And honestly, to me, the storyboard is the hardest part. Um, not coming up with the story, the characters, I feel like if you write strong characters, they kind of like tell their own story by themselves. So if I really know my characters, the dialogue kind of flows pretty smooth. And so by the time I get to the storyboard, I'm like, what am I doing? I kind of got an idea how I want the panel to look and the page to look, but to me that's the hardest part is getting that done. Adapting from the storyboard, I mean, you're on autopilot after that, drawing the pages and things like that. So, um, but I think that's where a lot of the thinking goes. And if you ever watch any of the interviews of uh, comic book creators, or especially manga artists, they call it a name in Japan. So that's what they submit to their editor is essentially like their version of the storyboard. And that's either what gets rejected or passed before they can even start working that week. And so when they're working on the name, um, it's that's where they're coming up with all their ideas and putting everything on paper and figuring out how the page is going to lay through. And so that's essentially what I try to do is like make sure that storyboard is tight. So that way, once I start actually, penciling and inking and things like that, I'm not worried about do I know what panel's supposed to be where. Um, so yeah, that's how I determine where, a long-winded way to say that's how I determine what panels go
Cool.
where.
It's cool. Yeah. I tell you the truth, I haven't really read like I don't read manga like that. I
Right,
read
right,
mostly like DC or a little bit of Marvel or
right.
sometimes alternative comics, but
Hmm.
I don't read manga too much. I'll probably like have watched a manga animated film
Right,
or
right.
I did read I have read some Dragon Ball, you know,
Hmm.
especially like when Goku was a young kid and all that
Yep.
stuff. Yeah. So so how many volumes are you planning to do with Chase's Hot?
Well, so if Chasers, honestly, I have no idea. I like I said, I wrote it as a one shot,
Yeah.
just getting it out there, and I wouldn't even be able to plan how many volumes it needs because even though I have kind of like an ending that I would want it to do if it was a series, it could be something that was 5 volumes to 10 to 20. I mean, you could write on forever just because of the way the story is designed. And so, yeah, so far, no plans to do any volumes of it currently. Um, but it is one of the stories that I have kind of like at the top of my list that maybe I would want to explore, as an independent creator.
Do you have like other issues to it or
No, no, yeah, yeah. So
um,
this is it was a one time deal on that, and kind of same thing with anti-aging as well. Like they both were just one shots, just to make
oh,
sure
that's
that
what you mean by one shot? Because I'm like
yeah.
thinking like, what do you mean by one shot? I was gonna ask you
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So a one shot is just a typical. The easiest way to explain it is like a short story for a comic. So it
Oh,
has a beginning, and an ending contained within that one issue. And so yeah, I mean they do it in Western comics, they do it a lot in
okay,
uh Eastern comics as well. But like sometimes, the best way to think about a one shot is a pilot episode of a TV
okay.
show.
I got you. I got
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
got.
So essentially, yeah, it's like the pilot episode. And if from there it's kind of like it's also a good thing to show like folks that might be interested in working with you, like if they like, oh man, we really like this idea. Or if you
Yeah,
got a one shot, it looks better kind of like in your portfolio or something like that,
yeah,
if you
yeah.
were
It
looking to
was
get
cool.
published,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, that's cool. Like, I mean, is
Mhm.
that for you to get your foot on the door in the door, if I could say that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean that, and also for me personally to be able to look back at my progress, you know. So it's like without, it's nice because you don't have to commit to writing the whole story, which could take, years and years and years to complete.
Yeah,
So you kind of get the chances to like explore these different ideas, and that's really nice. And so I would say that I'm still in that amateur infancy phase of being an independent comic creator, and with that, I have a lot more room to play around with things because I'm not dedicated to a certain, IP. Um, so there's a lot of freedom with that, but also it's kind of like, man, you got to start writing something, or you'll never finish an entire story that you want to write. And it's cool because nowadays, back in the day, if you wanted to be an American comic book artist, you had to go work for Marvel or DC.
yeah,
There was no real other outlet. Then obviously like things like IDW and Dark Horse and things like that started popping up, and then creators had a little bit more freedom, but they were still under an imprint. Nowadays, you can put something on the web, work for yourself essentially, and never have to sign a publishing deal if you really wanted to, and do a whole story. So it's a cool time to be a independent comic creator. But with that, there becomes a level of like saturation of like other creators doing the same thing, and having the ability to do the same thing as you were doing. Kind of like before, social media and YouTube, there was television, and you had to work for a broadcasting company or work under, one of these broadcasting companies to get your show seen. But now, you can put eyes on your work without ever having to sign a deal. So, I like that. I like the idea that I can still write whatever I want to and post it on a site, and you're getting the true, authentic, unedited version of what I'm doing. But yeah, to be honest, it's nice to have those in your back pocket too, because maybe one day I do want to work with a publisher, and then I at least have something that I can show them. So
I mean, they a little correction. They did in them days, but it's
mm,
just that they were underground. Because I
right,
just
yeah,
discovered that that
hmm,
people had published their own comics, but it just
oh yeah,
wasn't like how it is now, where you could just throw it, you know, on an Instagram or whatever.
right,
But yeah, and you know, like DC and Marvel, they were like the two entities that
hmm.
yeah. So yeah. I mean,
It
like
really it would have
not
been cool to work with them though. Like back in the day, that would have
yeah,
been kind of cool,
but
especially when new superheroes were getting created and stuff like that. That
yeah.
would have been awesome.
But I mean, do you go to like comic conventions like to post to
Yeah.
put work out there?
Well, not necessarily to put my work out there, but I've been to conventions just to
Um,
either network or visit some of the publishers that might be there, just to kind of see like what they do. Sometimes even to just shadow, like shadow, especially been to a couple conventions, just shadowing my mentor, and just like, hey, what does it look like when you go to a convention and you're putting your work out there. So yeah, it would be cool to have like a either an artist alley or a booth at a convention one day. But I've definitely thought about that. I also really like doing illustration. So um, a lot of times when I'm not drawing comics, I'm doing some sort of illustration and trying to mess with some medium that I have no idea how to use, like watercolor. But just learning different things about art because I like comics, but I'm more passionate about the artwork in that process. And then the characters, once the characters are kind of like born, then I'm like, oh, they need a story. So that's where that comes from. But yeah, even if I wasn't writing comics, I'd still probably be doing art in some shape or form.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's like what question I wanted to ask you? Like, do you plan on like doing like a project that's consistent with with issues? Because
Yeah,
outside the one shot.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's kind of like what I've been tossing around lately. This month is more or less like dedicated to promotion for Chasers while it's still doing its run for the month. But during that time, I've had time to like think about like, okay, like if I want to move into doing a full blown series of something, what would that look like? And what options do I have? I could, work on anti-agent, or I could work on, chasers, and see how that goes. But yeah, I do plan on doing a more long running series with like chapters and installment. It would be nice if I could do monthly chapters. But if they don't end up monthly, maybe bi-monthly, something like that, just to have different installments in the story. That people can pick up and then essentially convert those to volumes. Um, so that's the plan. More like the discovery phase of like, what do I want to commit to writing long term?
Yeah, that's good. That's
You
good.
know,
Yeah. Like do you like what? Damn, I'm running out of questions. There was something I wanted to ask you. Like yeah, but otherwise, I mean, the artwork is nice, man. I mean, like
Mhm.
the program, like what did you use? Like, did you use Photoshop
Oh,
or
yeah. So that Chasers was done pretty much traditionally. So I use pen and ink on traditional comic book paper, and then
okay,
scanned it in. And I used Clip Studio Paint. Is more like you probably heard of it from interviewing other artists, but Clip Studio pretty much is like the go-to for like comic creators and animators. It's a really good solution outside of Photoshop, things like that. So I've used Clip Studio for uh, lettering the comic, doing the screen tones, any touch-ups that needed to be done, any effects that I wanted to add post production. So I really like Clip Studio for that. I prefer to work traditionally. It is technically a little slower, but I feel like I get more of like my personality kind of added into it, and I kind of like the idea of like once it's on the paper, that's it. There's no really going back. So it saves times in that sense where some folks really like working digitally, but digital, you can always undo. You can always undo what you did. And so I was getting stuck in the loop. I did anti-agent completely digitally outside of the cover. I did the cover traditionally and then uploaded it and worked on it. But I did that completely just using the Clip Studio software and almost nothing else to get it done. So, but yeah, if you catch me, I sketch every day. So when I'm coming up with characters, I'm coming up with them in my sketchbook because I can edit it faster there. I can work on it faster there. So um, I think that digital is good for sure, but I like having that piece of paper in my hand at the end of the day, to like, oh wow, like there's only one of these. So yeah, yeah, but Clip Studio Paint's great. I know Photoshop is great. I'm not really well versed in Photoshop. I never really used it. But those would be like the two programs that I would recommend working in.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, like how's your environment? Like like is it small? Like do you like when you're drawing? Like do you see people to draw or I don't know. I was just throwing that out there.
Oh, like, do you mean like, do I
Like a
already have an
gesture
image?
drawing, like a gesture drawing. Like like
Oh,
if you see somebody like or like objects, like you just like gesture draw like to get better on your art.
Yeah, so I've used a lot of different techniques. Maybe I would say like maybe when I was working to really learn anatomy better, which obviously an anatomy is still going to be something that I can still improve on. But when I was really struggling with it, references, doing those gestures was really helpful. learning things from real life. But now I draw almost primarily from imagination. But I do use a lot of construction. Most of my art is focused is character oriented, it's focused on characters. And so um I use a lot of construction. And so every artist has their method. I figured out how to make my mannequins, for the underdrawing. And as long as I can pose that mannequin, or as long as I can move forms in space, I can create any pose I want to from imagination, because I'm just moving shapes at that point. And then adding in the details comes later. So, if I wanted to have, Eno doing a cool pose where she's shooting her guns, and like there's one scene where she's flipping over Dan with her guns or whatever. I'd never seen that before, like that idea before, but I just kind of had an idea, like, what would it look like if somebody was doing that pose? And so a lot of times when I'm doing a lot of practice, I know a lot of artists have sketchbooks that people never really even see. I'm doing different things, trying to push myself to try different like poses, and even work on different props and backgrounds and things like that. So when it comes time to put it on the page, I'm not spending so much time trying to figure out how to draw that. I've already at least done that before. And that is something that is ongoing, but I would say that was the most difficult, kind of like a, you know, kind of like a mountain that you climb, but like once you get to the peak of it, or once you can kind of start seeing over it, it doesn't seem as much as difficult as it was when you were climbing up. And so now that I've kind of gotten to a point where I'm more comfortable um, with what I'm drawing and the shapes that I'm seeing, it makes it a lot, like I said, a lot easier when it comes to the page. So, and some of those things are gestural. I kind of like drawing like loose, and I don't really want my characters to feel stiff. I want them to feel kind of dynamic, even though sometimes it might be over the top. But yeah, I want them to feel like they're alive and moving, kind of like if you were watching like those old, like I said, those old Disney films. Those animators and stuff like
Yeah.
that were, top tier. And so I want to put that movement on the page. I want stuff to move like that. And if it gets too stiff, if it gets too boring, I don't even enjoy drawing it at that point. So I'll probably redo it.
How you stay? How do you, how, for yourself? How do you stay consistent?
Honestly, it's kind of like I think about it like a workout routine or something like that. I mean, you have to do it like every day or something every day. You have to put it in every single day, or like you start to kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say lose it, but you don't get as many miles. And, there's
Yeah.
that old additive about like 10,000 hours to try to become like an expert at something. And so, like, if you're not working towards those 10,000 hours, like some days I've only got like an hour to draw, right? Or I might only have like 40 minutes to really draw. Like I might have a busy thing going on that day, but I still try to get in at least a little bit of practice, because, most of those pages take on average 4 to 6 hours to finish. And so when I don't have that much time, I might still do something just to keep in my routine, because the progress really isn't like linear. Like it'll feel like you're not really making any progress because you're drawing either the same things, or doing the same exercises every single day. And then all of a sudden, like 2 months later, it's like, wow, that looks completely different than what I drew 2 months ago. So it's working, but yeah, honestly, I built a habit of it, and I'm at the point now where if I don't draw for a day, it feels kind of bad. So,
Yeah.
it feels kind of bad. Yeah, you get into it like that.
Yeah. I be in and out of drawing and stuff. Yeah. There's times I've tried to like make my own comic, but
Mhm.
sometimes just like being like consistent and like what's the word I'm looking for? Just like writing a story, and
Right,
it's
right.
not always easy. You know,
Yeah,
I guess I think it's I think I've learned like with talking to people, you just have to be consistent and just try
yeah.
like experimenting. You know.
Yeah, and And another thing is like it's never going to be perfect. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like and it might not be 100% of the visual that you had when it comes out, but the main thing is like finishing something, so that way you improve moving forward and you take whatever feedback or whatever you learned from the last work that you did and you incorporate it, moving forward, uh like Da Vinci wasn't Da Vinci overnight, like it took him a long time and it's a lot of dedication. I'm not gonna lie, like drawing comics is one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Yeah.
Because it is hard, coming up with a story, especially if you're not working with a writer. So now you gotta learn how to write, then you gotta learn how to draw. There you go. You got two things that take a lifetime to perfect, and you're just trying to piece it together as you go. So uh to any independent comic artist, I know how tough it is. I mean, but also there's always that freedom of like, well, this is mine. This is my story. I can do whatever I want to with this world. So that's what really is nice. But I guess it would be cool to work on a team like Marvel DC where, you're the penciler or the inker or something like that. And, you know, Western comics, they really get it done kind of like an assembly line. Um, and it works out. It works out, but still, even they have hard times meeting deadlines sometimes. So imagine just
Yeah.
working by yourself. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I know you said you tried to do work on a comic, like make your own comic. I mean, you know, I remember one was like during COVID, I was really getting back into it because everybody was on lockdown, right? And I had just like got into digital art for the first time, never really used it, bought like an iPad or something like that and tried it. And man, I could not draw what I wanted to draw. And because I couldn't draw what I wanted to draw, it was discouraging, you know? And you're like, man, I can't even tell the story the way I want to. So I need to learn how to draw before I can even do the story. And I think a lot what I really do respect about some of the creators that post on these sites, going back to Manga Plus, you'll look through their works and it's like maybe it's not the best artistically, but they finished a story, you know, and like that's really good. Like the fact that they still gave it a shot and tried to finish the story um, with the tools that they had available to them. Whereas, I was like, man, if I can't draw it, if I can't communicate, because that's what artists do, we try to communicate with people through visuals. And if I can't get my point across, I can't communicate to people how I want to. I got to go back to the drawing board. I got to get better at that. So, um, and that's where the consistency comes in and maintaining, a good schedule, a good uh, work ethic when it comes to that. And then all of a sudden it clicks, just like anything else. So there's still some stuff that I struggle with, but nowhere near as much as I did 3 years ago,
Yeah, yeah, that's
for
cool. I
sure.
mean, it's good. I mean, it's a good step. Like you put your stuff out there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like if you was working on this Chaser High, like
Yeah.
what would be like another story to it if you can tell.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, um, Chasers High is, in my mind, essentially a story of a basically like a working class citizen wanting to essentially have her own things. So, like, imagine if, just you want your own home and your own land, those things like that. And so that's what Eno is essentially in pursuit of, and what you know money is the goal or the means to an end. You got to have some sort of capital, and that's what becoming a chaser uh adds for her to her life. And so uh Chaser's High would essentially be that, and you kind of get that uh base like post or a excerpt of that through the one shot, because in the story she's already has her home, she already has a vehicle, she already has her land, but she's still working. And so that's essentially what Chasers High would, if it looked more like a series, you're looking at how she obtains those things, how she goes about doing that. what it means to be a chaser, being a part of the Chasers Guild, um, and what all dangers come with being a part of that. I was actually just discussing this not too long ago, but you know, I think about being a chaser like working a job, and you might not necessarily align with the morals, but you still got to put food on the table.
Yeah,
So it's like, sometimes we work in areas that are like morally gray, but we still have to kind of like look out for ourselves or our families and things like that. Um, and so we might let go the idea that this company does X, Y, and Z, because of how well it pays, or the benefits from working there. And that's kind of like being a chaser. Anybody can hire one. You know, so good people can hire chasers, but so can bad people, right? And it's up to you if you're going to take the job, etc. And so I like that idea because it's realistic. It's more or less like how I would imagine uh, contractors would work in that space. And then you add like, the fantasticals piece about, making it sci-fi, and then you can just go anywhere with it. You could send Eno on a job to another planet to do whatever, kind of like Futurama. If you ever watch
yeah,
Futurama,
I see.
yeah, kind of like Futurama. They go on different delivery missions all the time and things like that. So chasers could do those same things, and sometimes like in Futurama, they might be delivering to a planet that is like, I don't know about this, or delivering certain goods and things like that. So I think about chasers like that, just contractors, um, you know, working for the highest bidder. And yeah, yeah.
So like the with the villain is that cowboy like the sheriff not the I don't know he's a sheriff but
Desperate Dan.
yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, Dan is a he is a former chaser. Um he was a part of the Chasers Guild. But they thought that he was actually dead. He kind of disappeared. But you see later on that he's actually alive and well, and he's working for someone else. And so Dan is a villain, but he's more of an obstacle, kind of, because in the story, he has control of the mines um, that supply a powerful resource in the story called uranium. And the uranium is essentially a natural resource that can power, different things. So imagine if there was a glowing rock that you could add to your house and it would generate power for you. And so the uranium mines that are rare, Dan has a hold of them, and he is taking the uranium and selling that stuff on the black market. So the chasers, Grizz and Eno, are contracted to retake those mines essentially and eliminate Dan. Uh, and that's their goal. But there's a twist in there. Like I said, I don't want to spoil it.
all right,
But
that's cool.
essentially, yeah, yeah, Dan essentially is what I would call the villain of the story. As amongst other things. But like I said, he's more or less an obstacle in that way. I really like creating him. I always think it's cool to write villains. I think honestly, writing a good villain is much harder than writing a good protagonist, um, because the villain can do so much for your story. It's kind of like watching The Dark Knight, and Heath Ledger just stealing the show as the Joker, and it really making that Batman series what it was. Good villains like Bane, things like that. I think about all the great comic books that we know and love that still maintain today, and the ones I think that did the best, like Batman and Spider-Man, they all had great villains. And so um, I always try to like use those as inspiration to write like a really good villain, and make a solid one. So moving forward, that's what I'll attempt to continue, is just making good characters for the protagonist to go up against and making it interesting. Spider-Man doesn't beat the same every villain the same way. Um, and sometimes he doesn't beat them at all. So it's cool to, you know, uh, add things like that into your stories because I think that makes them interesting. Um,
Yeah. What was that process like? I don't know if you covered it. It seemed like you did, but but like just like making like the pages and stuff. Like how long did like it took you like a week, like some panels?
yeah, so most of the pages, like I said, I did traditionally. So um, each page would take from pencils to finished inks is like I would say 4 to 6 hours. Sometimes if a page is
Okay.
heavier, like if I went heavier into detail, it might take 8 hours to do a page. Um, just because there's a lot more inks and things like that that I wanted to put into it. Which I probably could have cut that down by doing like spot blacks and just not really rendering as much as I did. But I don't know. Once I'm there, I'm just kind of like going. And when I feel like it's done, maybe it's done, And I look up at the time, I'm like, oh crap, it's like 12 o'clock, Yeah, so doing each page, I was really trying to stay consistent in like, especially if I only had a few hours to dedicate every night to working on it. I would try to do, maybe I pencil one night and then ink a page another night. And then that would end up being like sometimes I'd be able to do like 2 to 3 pages a week, um, just to kind of like stay on track. And then some weeks, if it's a heavy week, I only made it to 1 page a week. So it just, like I said, it really depends because amongst that, still trying to maintain and build up Instagram. So I would have to do like an illustration for Instagram that week, right? So then I got to block time for that. So really kind of like a part-time hobby if you really think about it. But still trying to the the pages are um, a lot easier when you have, like I said, a storyboard.
Yeah.
And having that storyboard made it so much easier than thinking up trying to figure out where I was going to do everything on the fly, because that would have took even longer. So uh, I think doing the upfront work is good.
On the what?
The upfront work, like doing your
Oh,
storyboards, doing your scripts.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Some people can work. I mean, I've seen some artists like they just start drawing on a page and then that's it. That's how they finish, that's how they work. Um, I'm not one of those.
Yeah.
So, I need a little bit more structure. But maybe later on when I'm more experienced and more comfortable with whatever story I'm working on, I could do something like that off the rip. But I still feel like because what happens is it's like I find a lot of plot holes in my stories when I'm working through the storyboard or working through the script. And so
Yeah.
I go, oh, that didn't make any sense. So I go back and rewrite it. Well, it's easier to do that before I drew a whole page. So I like the preliminary stages, even though they, to me, take the most time personally.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, like, yeah, I could say, and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What was I gonna ask you? I was gonna ask you something else. It ain't coming to me right now, but I think, yeah. I mean, I think that's a wrap. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I really appreciate you sharing because I,
Oh, for
I, I
sure.
think what there was something but it was something to ask you. Like, are you friendly um other artists on it, Instagram or like social media? I think that's
You
the
said,
question. That's the question.
oh, do
No,
I
and
follow other artists?
yeah, or do they converse with other artists? Like do they give you like you do you get like advice from other artists that you would
Oh,
say that you're friendly with on social media, like
um,
Instagram? Or,
maybe I would say maybe like a couple. Most of my uh, advice or stuff came from my mentor working with him.
okay,
Shout out Jay Oden. He's the comic book artist at Hammer. I was did a 6 month mentorship with him, and then we became friends after and stuff like that. So I kind of look up to him, kind of like for guidance or um, things like that. Make sure that I'm on the right
Guys,
path.
meet? How did
What's that?
meet? No, how did you guys? That's one I
Oh,
asked.
oh, how did we meet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was actually at a comic book convention that I went to um, in Durham, North Carolina, and I heard that he was doing mentorship because I followed, him and the publisher that he works with on Instagram, and I was like, oh, they're gonna be there. I was like, I should go check them out, and yeah, I heard about his program. I was like, man, why not? Why not sign up? Anything because you gotta. I think it's good to think that like you can still learn from people, right? So I took this mentorship, and man, that it helped tremendously because there was a lot of things like I didn't see that helped on the art side, storytelling side, comic book side, how the industry works, all that knowledge. He had already had it because he's been doing it for so long, and so I had none of that knowledge, so it was cool to like watch him and then learn from him. And then it was easier when I started doing things on my own. I was like, oh, I already know kind of what to do because I already seen somebody else do it. Um, so yeah, that was really helpful. But yeah, I mean, him and any other artists that is published by his imprint, Saturday AM, those guys are great. They're doing their thing, and so but they were, independent comic creators that decided to make their own imprint. And so it's cool to see that stuff come to fruition. And if you're somebody that is looking to, you like break into that space, you got the chance. So, but yeah, Jay was a really good resource, and very helpful and kind of fast tracking. You think like, yeah, you probably could have learned all that stuff on your own, but it's kind of like, yeah, but if you would have just seen somebody help have somebody else like guide you, that type of thing, uh, you get to a better space. So at least a lot quicker. And that was my thing. I was like, man, I really want to like improve as fast as I can, and that was a good opportunity. So
Yeah, I think you mentioned that, but I didn't. I was thinking that probably there's other people, you probably get advice from and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. Nah, most of the times I don't work. There's like a couple artists that I do follow,
Yeah,
um, that they will post like either certain techniques or like their art styles. What I try to do is like I follow like a lot of other artists,
mm,
on Instagram, and that gives me kind of inspiration. I'm like, oh, that was a really cool technique, or like, oh, I really like what they did there, and I'll try to like incorporate some of that stuff into my work. So I just get inspired by other people who are either doing the same thing, like working in comics and things like that. Somebody that I discovered, it's crazy to think that I didn't even know who they were until like last year, but Peach Momoko, and her Marvel covers and things like that. I was like blown back because I looked at her work. I was like, holy crap! Like this is crazy good, And so I really liked how she was incorporating things into how she was taking her own spin on those Marvel characters. And so I did a lot of fan art on my page too of like different Marvel characters and things like that. And I was really into X-Men 97. So I did like a whole run where every week I would draw X-Men in my style and things like that. And so I just get inspired by other people, and try to learn from them by just looking at what they produce. Um, you know, and then if I really like what they do, more than likely they're already teaching people things on YouTube. So I try to find out exactly how to like, or doing live streams, and I just drop in and kind of like lurk in the shadows and like, oh man, I didn't even think about using that technique. So constantly excited about just learning from other artists, but by just observing, because that's what we do. We observe,
yeah.
you know.
Did you ever thought about like taking like a class or a course or something like that for
I
art?
have, yeah, I've thought about it. I've definitely thought about it, especially like when I was starting trying to like learn digital artwork, because that's like a whole different beast in itself. So I'd still probably do a digital art class, um, in the future if that was something that I see myself using more of. But that I feel like that would be the biggest thing that I feel like I would want to, if there was something I wanted to improve on, I would do like a digital art class or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Trey, you're on the you're in the right spot. I mean, you got your art out there. Yeah, man.
Mm.
So,
Yeah,
yeah. Really appreciate you sharing and yeah, and
for sure.
I'll keep, yeah I'll check to see if you did some more art or
Yeah,
some
yeah,
panels or
yeah,
pages. So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, so man, thank you again, man.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate this. It was kind of cool, like, talking about chasers and getting to know a little bit more about you and what you do. So, like I said, appreciate the opportunity. Um, and hopefully I'll have something else to show you soon. Maybe even
Yeah,
a series and we'll do something else.
yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, man. Then I'm
All
gonna
right,
put
sounds good.
your stuff on. I'm gonna put your Instagram in the description and stuff.
Okay,
People
sounds
know.
good.
All right, man.
All right, thanks a lot, man. Well, you have a good night.
You too, brother.
Okay, lady, the one, the one, the one, the one, the one, the one.